So as of now we have seen different commands with respect to the how to create the directory as well as how to manage the directories, right. So now we will try to see some of the commands with respect to creation and deletion and different operations on the files, right. So the very first thing is that how to create a file. So what is the corresponding command for that, right. So there may be the two things like create a file and add a data, or maybe just I want to create an empty file. Okay. So let us try to see how I can create an empty file. Okay. So for that, what is the command? So there is a command called as the touch, which helps you to create a empty file. Okay. So just try to open the terminal, okay, and run this particular command, right. So first let's check what is there in this particular directory, okay, desktop directory. You can see that there are like two directories present, okay, and if you fire this command touch followed by the name of a file which you want, right. So this is name of a file. So if you fire this particular command, then a file with this name will be created in the directory which you are currently. So once again, if you try to see the contents of that particular directory, then you can see that this file has been created, right. So the file which you had given the name of, with this command you can see the file has been created, right. So and this particular file is an empty file. We will try to see the contents of that file, right. So this particular empty file has been created. Okay. So if I want to then create a new file, okay, and add some data into it, right. So there are like some standard methods for it, okay. So for that you need to use some editors, text editors, right. And in the Linux operating system there are like two kind of text editors. First one is the command line text editors like Vim, Vi, Nano, Emacs, etc. There are also like GUI based editors like gedit, cat, leafpad, etc. So here we will try to see these widely used two commands, like two editors, one from the command line editor Vim and another from the GUI based gedit. So what exactly the Vim tool does? So when you try to use this particular utility to create a file, so as soon as you fire this particular command, let's say for example you fire this particular command Vim, okay, and give the specific name to the respective file, then a file will be created, okay, with this particular name, and it will be opened in the same terminal, okay, to add the data into. Let's say for example whenever you like fire such kind of command, okay, within the same terminal, okay, there will be like this file will open to add some data. So by adding some data into that particular file, like let's say for example I have added some this particular data and save that particular data, then you can observe that, okay, earlier there was no file with name file2, right. When you fire this command vim file2 and then add some data as we have seen in the previous slide, okay, and save that particular file, then you can see that file2 has been created, right. And as I was mentioning, okay, this file 2 has some content. So, there is some size associated with this file, right. This particular file was created with vim, right, and this particular file 1, this was created with touch command, right, and you can see the size of this particular file, right. So, this file is basically an empty file. So, with the touch command, whatever the file you create, okay, so those empty files are created with the touch command, and with the different tools like a vim or gedit text editor, you can open the file and you can write some content or some data into that particular file and save that particular file. You will create and save the content in that particular file, right. Now, another way is like a GUI based utility. We will try to see the gedit utility for GUI based text editors. So, for the command line text editors, we have seen the vim. Here we will try to see gedit. So, how you can use the gedit? So, once again, let us say for example, you are in the desktop directory and there are some contents. Now, fire this particular command gedit, okay, this is the keyword and the name of file which you want to create for addition of the data, right. So, as soon as you fire this particular command, one GUI will be opened, okay, and in that particular GUI you can write the content you want, right. So, here I have just write it and just save this particular file. Then you can observe that, okay, this particular file 3 has been created with some data, right. So, in this particular way you can create files and you can open those files, you can put the content and once again you save the files. So, these are these are different ways by which you can create files. There is another utility as well, where you can redirect the content, okay, to a new file. It means like somehow you are actually writing, creating and writing the new files with different commands. We will try to see that in the next few slides. So, these are whatever we have seen as of now, like creating the empty file with the touch command, creating a file with the text based terminal based text editors like a vim, as well as creating a file with GUI based text editors like gedit. These are like a standard ways to create the files, right. So, now if I want to delete or remove the files or directories which I have created, okay. So, earlier we have seen that in order to remove the empty directory we used rmdir command. But what if there is the content in that particular directory, or maybe if I want to delete a file which I have created. So, for that what is the corresponding command? So, there is a command called as rm which is used to delete a file or directories. So, how to delete files and directories we will try to see. Just take an example here, okay. The same example which we had created, okay, let us see. In this particular directory, these are the contents, okay, and now I want to delete this particular file which we have created. So, just put this particular command followed by the name of the file which you want to delete, and once this command is fired, once again if you check the contents in that particular directory, you find that, okay, this file 3, okay, it has been deleted. So, this file 3 is no longer present. So, this particular rm command is basically permanently delete the content which has been specified along that particular command, right. So, now we have seen that how to delete the file just by specifying the name of the file which you want to delete. But what if I want to delete a directory or maybe the files in the another directory, Okay. So, one directory may have the another directories in a hierarchical order. Okay. So, if I want to delete the complete directory along with the data which it contains, in that particular case you can pass some of the additional parameters to this particular rm command. Okay. So, if I pass this particular rm hyphen r, it means that delete the contents of the directory which has been specified recursively. It means that, so the directory which has been specified, as like here, let us say for example, this is the test directory 2, right, and this particular directory has some contents like child, file 4. These are the contents of this test directory. It means that this particular test directory is not an empty directory. This directory also have some other directories or files. But in this particular case, I want to delete completely this particular directory. And traditionally, as we have seen earlier, if I want to remove an empty directory, we generally use this rmdir command. But if I try to delete this test directory which is having some content within it, with the rmdir command, it doesn't actually delete, and it says, okay, this file cannot be deleted because this directory is not empty. So, how I can delete such kinds of directory? In that particular case, this rm-r or rem command come into place with some additional parameters along with it. So, instead of rmdir, if you just pass this particular rem command with hyphen r, it tells that, so within this particular directory, whatever the directories or files are present, okay, just delete all those. So, recursively you delete everything. So, once you fire this particular command, okay, this particular directory which has been earlier present, so now that particular file is not present in this particular directory now. So, in this particular way you can remove the files or directories within the directories, or like the contents within that particular directory, everything you can delete, right. But always remember that, okay, rm command basically deletes the data permanently. So, whenever you are running the rm commands on the system, always use that particular command with a caution, because it permanently deletes the data. Okay. Now, we have seen that how to create the file, how to put the content in that particular file, okay, and also if the file or the directory has been created, how we can delete that particular file. Now, I just want to, instead of opening that particular file or instead of opening that particular file in some text editors, okay, if directly I want to put the content of that particular file on the terminal itself, okay, or see the content of that file on the terminal, then what is the way, what is the corresponding command? So, in that particular case, there is a command called as a cat. So, basically this particular command helps to see the data or the content quickly on the terminal itself, and this is the another way to create the file and the put data into. How to do that? We will try to see that aspect as well. Okay. So, let us try to see the first aspect of this particular cat or concatenate command, right. So, let us consider, okay, this is the directory and there are some files. Now, I want to see the content of this particular file too, and I want to put it on the terminal itself. I do not want to open the text editor, okay, like Vim or the gedit. I just want to put it in on the terminal itself, right. So, with this particular command you can do that. So, just pass the file which you want to see the content of to this particular cat command, okay, and whatever the contents of this particular file are there, those has been printed on the terminal itself. So, this is the basic use of this particular cat command, right. Basically, whatever the content of that particular file are printed on the terminal. This particular command helps not only to print the content of single file, rather than multiple files content we can print on the terminal at the same time. And this basically the concept is called as the concatenation. It means that let us say this particular file 1 is there, like file 2 is there. First I want to print the content of this file followed by the content of this file. So we can pass multiple files and in a single go I can concatenate the content of that particular file, right. So this way we can do it, right. So just pass those files, file 2, file 3 in this particular case. So this is the content. So this is the content of the file 1, sorry, file 2, and this is the content of file 3, and all that particular content has been printed on the terminal in the sequence which we provide to this cat command. Now, as I was mentioning, okay, how I can create another file with the help of this particular cat command. You just take an example, okay. We have seen that there was like a content, okay, in the both files, like file 2 had the content, this particular content was there, right. File 3 has this particular content. Now I want to create another file, okay, from this particular content. Let us take an example. This is the cat command, okay. This is the file 2 having some content, file 3 having some content, and I want to create a file 4 with the content from these two files. It means that the content of these two files somehow I am redirecting it, okay. Redirect. So content of these files actually I am redirecting it to file 4. So in this particular case what it will happen, so whatever the contents of file 2, file 3, okay, are concatenated, and another file is actually created with the name which we give, and whatever the content of these two files actually is transferred or copied here, and the name of this particular file, like one file will be created with this particular name. So you can see that earlier before running this particular command there was no file with name file 4. But as soon as we fire this particular command and then we see the content of this directory, then you can see that a file 4 has been created, and the content of this particular file, if I am to see, this is the content, right. So this is like a very good and beautiful example and the use case of the cat command. And one additional parameter here we have seen that this particular parameter is nothing but the redirection parameter. This is like a very useful parameter in Linux to write the scripts, to in the automation process or many places. This is very useful utility where actually we redirect the output of one file and put it into the another file, and so there are so many uses of it. So here in this particular case, whatever the output of this particular command is redirected to file 4. Now just take another example of it, okay. So the same thing, let us say for example we run this particular cat command once again, okay, and the same command like file 2 and file 3's content has been redirected to file 4, and if I see the content of this particular file, okay, this is the content. So though I have once again redirected the file, so in the second time as well, okay, whatever the content in these two files, that has been transferred, and the earlier content of this particular file were overwritten. So, if we pass only a single parameter like this will overwrite the content of like earlier content of that particular file and create a fresh file with that name. But there may be the scenario where I do not want to overwrite the content, rather than I want to append the content. So, in that particular case, if I pass these two redirection parameters instead of one, like so the same command, just I change this one, instead of one I redirect in the same file. Then once again if I try to see the content, then you can see that okay, when in this particular case the earlier contents were not removed. So, those contents were as it is. So, once again when I fire this particular command, so those contents were appended basically in the same file. So, this is basically the use case of the cat command, where you can like display the like content of file on the terminal, as well as you can create a new file with this particular cat command and start like redirect the content of one file to another file, or maybe you can directly start writing the content and then save and come out. So, those things we can do with the cat command, right. So, now let us see if there is a file or the directory, how we can copy the content of one file to another file or one directory to another file, another directory, right. So, for that there is a command called as the cp. With the cp command you can copy a content of file, or you can create another instance of that particular file or the directory. So, let us take an example of it. Okay. So, there are some files, okay, and let us say this is the content of this particular file number 3. Okay. So, with the cat command I am just printing the content of it. Okay. So, this is the content. Now, I want to create another file with name file 4, okay, which should have the content of file 3. So, for that I just fire this command cp followed by the source file and then destination file. So, whatever the content of this particular file are there, you just create another file with the file name 4, file 4 name, and copy the content over there. So, if we try to see after firing this particular command, if we try to see once again the contents of this particular directory, then you observe that file 4 has been created here. And now, if I see the content of this file 4, this is nothing but the same content. It means that we have copied the content of one file to another file, right. Now, if I want to do the same with the directories, then what is the thing? As we have seen the rm commands, recursively if I want to delete some files or directories within that particular directory, I can use the rm-r command, right, pass some parameters. So, likewise for the cp command as well, if I want to copy a directory, okay, because directory may have contains some another directories or files within that particular directory. Now, I want to recursively copy everything from that particular directory, I want to copy and create another directory having the same content, right. So, for that particular case we can use the cp command with some additional parameters passed to it. Okay. So, once again -r means recursively copy the content of one directory and create another directory, right. So, just take an example. In the same directory there is a directory with simple project name. Now, and in that particular directory basically there are so many contents. It means that simple directory is not an empty directory, there are so many contents here. Okay. Now, with this particular command cp-r, then the source directory here simple project, I just copied that to another directory, okay, which I pass here. Okay. So, this particular command what it will do, copy the content of this particular simple project directory and create a new directory, and will have the content same as the simple project directory. So if I just try to see the contents once again, then you can see that another directory with project name has been created over there. And if I see the contents of this particular directory, the same content which this particular command, this directory has, so the same content it also possesses, right. So in this particular way, we can create copy of the directories. So now let's try to see some of the aspects regarding the file permissions and the ownerships. Okay. So as of now, we have seen how to create the files. Okay. How do how to create the files, directories, as well as how to do some like operations like copying, deleting, and so operations on the files as well as the directories. Now we'll try to see some important concepts in the Linux, where if you have the files or the directories, what are the like security aspects of that, right. As Linux is the multi-user operating system, if the file is created, who owns that particular file and who has the what access of that. So in case of the Linux files, okay, the authorization, file authorization or the direct authorization is one of, like file authorization is one of the fundamental concepts of Linux security and the management. These commands basically, which comes in this particular category, like file permission and the ownership commands, are basically used to manage the file permissions, ownerships, and the access control of that particular file or directory, right. In file permissions and the in Linux, basically file permission and the ownership determine who can access and modify the files and the directories, right. So let's take an example. We create one particular file in the Linux, okay, and with respect to that particular file, okay, what are the different types of users associated with that particular file. As we have seen in the ls-lrt command, there were like different links associated with that particular file, right, and there like different users. So in a broader sense, okay, on the Linux there are like three categories of users basically. The user who is the owner of that particular file, means that the user who have created that particular file, right. And another type of type of user is a group associated with respect to that file. The group is nothing but a group of users who share the access to the file, and others means like everyone else on that particular system. So owner is the one who has created that particular file. Group is group of users who have the share access to that particular file, okay, and others is the one who have like everyone else on that particular system, right. So regarding that, permissions are basically divided into three types, okay. So for the one particular file or the directory, there are like three kinds of permission. One is the read permission. Read permission means that he can only read that particular file, okay, or view the content of that particular file. Write permission means who can modify that particular file or a directory, right. And execute permission means that he can execute the file, like if there is application and there are the binaries, okay, so one can execute that particular binary, okay. And if in case of that, if that is the directory, if he has the execute permission, he can navigate or traverse in that particular directory, right. So these are like different types of permissions in the Linux file system, like Linux operating system, right. Now generally whenever any file is created, okay, this particular permission structure is basically displayed in a 10 character formats that we have already seen, but once again let's try to see that. So in ls-lrt there were some parameters, like when we had created the file and when we just write the ls-lrt, there are at initially there are some characters in that particular in a long format, right. So we'll try to see what are those parameters and what is the meaning of it, right. So those aspects like are divided into basically in the four aspects, right. So the very first character in that aspect is nothing but a type of file. So if there is a dash, it means that, okay, whatever the file present in that particular directory is of a regular file, it's normal file, Linux file, right. And if it shows D, it means that it is a directory, right. And the next three parameters, the next three characters are basically associated with the owner of that particular file. The next three parameters, like next three characters are associated with the group permissions for that particular file, right. And next three characters are associated with the permissions for the others. So this R means that he has the read permission, dash means that okay, he don't have the write permission as well as the execute permission, he don't have those permission. Here in this particular case, if this is it R means that he has the write permission, but he don't have the he had the read permission, okay, but he don't have the write permission, but he has the execute permission. Here in this particular case, okay, for the owner he has the read permission, write permission as well as the execute permission, okay. So let's take an example here. Whenever we run this particular ls-la command here, okay, you just take an example of, let's say, this file 1. So here you can see that okay, this is a file, the first character. Then the owner of that particular file has read permission, okay, and write permission, but he don't have the execute permission here. So the groups, next three characters, groups also have the read permission as well as the write permission. And others only have the read permission, he don't have the write and execute permission, right. So similarly, you can see that there is a directory present here, right, and here you can see that okay, this is a directory. And when we talk about the permissions of this directory, so the owner has the read, write, execute permission, the group also have the read, write and execute permission, but the others have only the write and execute permission, they don't have the others only have the read and execute permission and don't have the write permission. So in this particular way, the permission structure of any particular file or directory is displayed in the Linux. I hope you understood this particular concept, okay. So now if in a generic way, if any file is created, how to change the permission of that particular file, okay. So for that case, I can use the command called as the chmod, change the mode of that particular command, right. And this, for the changing the permission of that particular file, there are like with the chmod command, okay, there are like two ways, one with the symbolic way and another one is the octal way, like a notation. In case of the symbolic like notation, there are like some of the aspects, like R means read, okay, W means write, X means execute, okay, U means user, G means group, and O means others, and A means all. So these are like basically the notations for these meanings or these like respective tasks, right. Let's take a first example. If I run this particular chmod command and I give U plus X and the file, it means here I am giving the user for this particular file, I am giving a permission to user with execute command. Here plus means that we are assigning that we are assigning the permission, and minus sign indicates that we are removing or retrieving that particular permission. So here U plus X, it means that we are giving the permission to user, okay, or the owner regarding the execution. So it adds the execution permission for the user, right. Here in the another case, okay, for this particular file, for the groups we are removing the write permission. So removes the write permission from the groups. Let's take another example where we are giving the permission to all. All means user, groups and others, everyone. We are giving the read permission. So this is a way of symbolic notation for giving the permissions with the chmod command, right. And there is another like way with regarding the numeric or the octal notation, where we have given some weightage basically. So for the read we have given the weightage of 4, for the write we have given the weightage of 2, and for the execute we have given the weightage of 1. And by combination of these numbers we decide, okay, what permission has to be given to whom. Let's take an example. Here if I run the chmod command and give the 755 permission for this particular file. 7 means that, okay, 4 for the read plus 2 for the write and 1 for the execute is equal to 7. It means that we are giving them read permission, write permission and execute permission as well, right. When we are telling that, okay, and this is for whom? This is for user or the owner of that particular file. So the very first character is associated with the owner. The second character is basically associated with the groups. First is with the owner, right, and third one is with respect to others. So let's say when we are dealing with the groups or the second character, it means that here 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. It means that here we have given them read permission but not given the write permission, we have not given, okay, and we have given the execute permission, right. So only the read and execute permission he has, but don't have the write permission. 5 character means. It means that owner have the read, write, execute permission, group have the read, execute permission, and similarly others also have the read and execute permission, right. So similarly, just take an example of another example, okay, where there is this particular file, okay, and for the user we are just giving like owner 6. 6 means that, okay, from just here if I try to check 4 plus 2 is equal to 6, means that we have given them the read permission and write permission, but we have not given the execute permission here, right. So similarly 4 means that we have only given them read permission only, right. In this way we can assign the permission to any particular like a file, who can read it, who can write it, who can execute it by this particular chmod command, right. You can just practically see that if, let's say for example, this in this particular desktop directory, okay, if I just put, there are like a 2 files and 1 directory, 2 files and 1 directory is there, okay, and you can see the default permissions, okay. So this is the, let's say, file, okay, annotation, then read, write permission having for the user, read, write permission for the groups, and the read permission for the others, okay. So now for this, by using this particular command, let's say for file 2, if I pass execute command, okay, then if I try to see that by default here, we have not specified the u or the specific groups or anything, it means that by default it is for the user or the owner, right. So you can see that retake. Okay. So, here we can see that this particular file has the read write and read write permission for the owners, as well as read write permission for the group, as well as read permission for the others. Don't have the write permission for the groups. Now we will be giving the permission of execution, execution permission to all, like for the groups, for the owners, as well as for the others. So if you just pass, we have not specified here the user, groups, or like owner. So it means that by default it will be for all, right? So chmod plus cx file, then you can just observe the permission here. Okay, so now earlier there were no permission for the other for the execute, now the permission is there. Earlier there were no permission for the groups as well, but now there is the permission. Okay, and earlier there were no permission for the owner regarding the execution, now there is the permission. So in this particular way we have given the permission to all users, owners, groups, and like others regarding the execution permission. So in this particular way we can assign the permission to users, right? So let's take the another example with the like octal or numeric way. So if I want to give the all permissions like read, write, execute, so initially there were like only the read, write for the user and the groups, but only the read permission for others. Okay, now with this command chmod plus like chmod 777 and this particular file 1, so it means that we are giving all permission, read, write, execute to all. Then you can see that the respective permission has been changed from this one to this one. So this particular file now everyone can read, write, and execute. So in this way we can change the permissions of file on the system. Now another thing is that how to change the ownership of a file. For that particular case I can use the command called as the chon. Okay, you can just check here. Okay, as we have seen that if let's say for example there is a file, okay, and this is the ownership, this is the who has created that particular file, this is the groups. Okay, so if I want to know like whenever any particular file is created, okay, so basically the by default who is the user of that particular session, he will be the owner of that particular file. Let's say if I create another empty directory with file name 3, okay, then you can see that by default owner is the user of that particular file, right? And if I want to see as I had mentioned, the user who creates that particular file is the default owner of that particular file, right? And if I want to now change the ownership of that particular file, let's say for example there is a user who has created this particular file, but I want to change the ownership or give the ownership to another user on that particular system. So that can be done with the command called as the chown, and this is basically the syntax of change ownership command. So first we specify the owner and then specify the groups and then the file. And if I want to know like how many groups are there, so there is a simple commands you can fire here, and you can see that on your system what are the groups, and you can pass the permission of that particular file to those groups, right? So here in this particular case, let's say for the same file 3, okay, I give the permission to another user on this particular system, which is a minion 1. So on my system basically there are like multiple users. Initially we had like logged in through the master user, okay, but there are also another users like minion 1, minion 2, some other users are there. In this particular case, for this particular file 3, okay, I want to give the permission like ownership, okay, for this particular file to minion 1 user, and also parallelly I want to change the group of it. So initially you can observe that the owner was master and the group was also master. when I run this particular command, okay, now once again I check the permission, then you can see that now this minion 1 is the owner of this group, sorry, of this particular file, and the shadow is now the group. So in this particular way I can change the ownership of that particular file, right. So these like changing, so now whenever any file or directory is created, so managing the permissions with respect to the directory and the file is very crucial aspects in the security perspective in the Linux operating system, because as I had mentioned earlier as well, Linux is the multi-user based operating system, multiple users actually working on the system at the same time. So it is very crucial that who should access your permission, who should have given what permission. So these like permissions and ownership management aspects are very essential. So in this particular like in the this last session we have seen that once the file is created, how we can change the permission of that particular file, if required how we can change the ownership of that particular file as well. So that is very important aspect in the Linux with respect to file permissions and the ownership. Thank you.